I'm 33 now, been married to my husband for 3 years. We don't have kids yet. And that's a whole nother story as to like, why God's waiting on that. But he gave me a vision of this little girl tugging on my sweater, sitting at my computer of, mommy, come play with me. And I said, no, honey, mommy has to work. And the Lord goes, that's what it's gonna be like if you don't allow me to pivot you where I wanna pivot you.
So many people wanna just control everything about their life, because like it's your life, right? And it's a precious thing. You wanna just take control as much as possible so you don't leave it to other people. But leaving it to faith, I think is a really important part of that, and understanding, hey, you can't control everything. And I think sometimes it's almost like the harder we try and control something, the more it gets ripped out from under us to prove a point, like, hey, like, who's really in control here? And it's a hard thing to accept for a lot of people.
3, 2, 1. Here we go!
Hey, welcome to another awesome episode of the No Half Cakes podcast. Today, I am super excited to bring with you, or to you rather, a guest of mine who is a dear friend, someone who has been a beacon of freaking light and confidence and just radiating positive energy, because this is a woman who goes out there and does some freaking amazing stuff. So I am just super excited to share her with you, and you can see some of that yourself. Without further ado, my amazing guest for today, Miss Molly Trotter. Molly,
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Thank you. I'm honored to have you here as well. And I know already this conversation is going to be one that is just full of freaking power that makes you just want to jump up and run through a wall. So I'm thanking you in advance for bringing your awesomeness and your energy to this.
Well, likewise, I know it's going to be good. The fact that we're just leaving it open and just kind of seeing where it leads, those are my favorite, because then it just comes out with that raw, and just the real flow and the answers. So no prep here, guys. We're just going off of base of wherever the Lord's going to lead this, literally, is all I got. So I'm excited to see where this goes.
Yeah, me too. I think it already has given me a bit of an insight into direction-wise, because being able to speak extemporaneously, like off the cuff, and just have conversation without a script or a teleprompter or notes or really like a direction, I think in order to do that, you really have to be confident in what you're talking about. As far as like being able to sit there and have the conversation, you don't have to worry about what should I say, because it's just, it just kind of comes naturally. You do a lot of speaking, presenting. Has that always been the case for you, or like take me through that from your perspective?
Yeah, I would say, I've always been in like a leadership position. I remember, to kind of give context, I remember at the age of 7, the Lord specifically calling me into leadership. And that may sound crazy for some. I get it. And it made sense, because it's like every sports team I was on, or if I was on a dance team, or I was anywhere, everybody always picked me to be the talker and to be the leader every time. And I'm like, okay, well, sure, I'll do it, no problem. So when the Lord actually audibly was calling me into leadership at the age of 7, I told him no. I said no, and I ran away. I was like, this is crazy. I don't, what are you asking me? I'm 7 years old. I'll give you the short version of, he pursued me ever since, and at 27 is when I officially stepped into leadership. So it started at a very young age, just kind of getting out there and talking. But from student council, from, middle school to high school to, college, being in leadership positions, and then getting a job as a news anchor and reporter, obviously there's a lot of talking that goes into that. So that's really where I was able to refine my skill set of speaking, which I didn't know it then, that was a place of equipping, but of course I know it now. Because when you get thrown into a news story, for example, breaking news, a fire breaks out, there's a crash, there's something deadly, it's always something doom and gloom, of course. You have to learn how to speak quickly. And you get information at rapid speed. You got to churn it up in your mind, and then you got to spit it back out and share it with the viewers at home, 15, 30 seconds, maybe a 60-second piece. And what I've learned from most people is that 60 seconds feels like 15 seconds to them. It's really short. So I was able in my early 20s in that profession, really was able to refine how I spoke back then and how I speak now, to really just kind of get to the point, and just, share and really be able to talk. So I've had a lot more failure than other people. I could give you stories of me being on the news, of almost cursing on live television on accident, just saying words that weren't even real words. just saying the wrong thing. And so I've had a lot of that. So it's not like I just came out of my mom's womb and whoop, here we are. There was a lot of practice that came into it. And then even once social media came out with Facebook Live, Instagram Live, and you could basically have your own news station on your own channel, I really dove into that very heavy when it first came out because I was like, this is genius. I don't have to listen to the narrative on the news that I was also speaking. That was really depressing. I could speak into things that were going to empower people, which I always wanted to. So anyways, we'll kind of pause there just to give you the trajectory.
That's awesome. I mean, that leads up a lot of questions for me. First question that it really brings to mind is like the transition from working in news to doing what you're doing now, which we'll get into in a second. Like, how did you make that jump? Because it is not a typical next step that I've ever seen. So kind of take me through that.
100%. So I was in the news industry for 5 years. And typically, if people got out of the news, they'd go into like PR or something like that. So it just wasn't on TV. It was like written form. Because believe it or not, in the news, it's very depressing. The pay is low. The pressure is high. They pick apart everything that you do. And it's just a very toxic environment. So 2 out of my 5 years in there, I was like, I don't think this is going to be my forever home. So my 1 year before I ended up leaving the industry, I actually got into the industry of network marketing. So I've always been a health buff. I was a collegiate athlete, played volleyball. So I was always into nutrition and fitness and health. So I got into a company because I found products that I loved. And then the business model clicked for me. I was like, this is genius. Once was a naysayer of this is a pyramid scheme because I didn't know and I didn't bother to look into it. And then I was like, actually, this is genius. So then I went down that route, helping people with their health. A lot of people coming to me because they've seen what I've been able to do in my own life. So being kind of a product of the product. And I thought that was it. And the Lord's like, nope, we're going to move you into actually utilizing your skill set from being in the news and then actually transferring that into a coaching business to help people get their confidence on camera is what I called it. So really to be able to hone their message, take all the clutter that's up here, get really focused and be able to get that out. And I paired that with social media marketing. So I love that because I love social media. I love the power of it, love connecting with people, loved helping people really take what they're passionate about and just be a better communicator. And so I was in the peak of my coaching business. And this is when Girl Power Alliance, the company that I helped founded, just started kind of coming on the scene. The CEO and founder came and basically found me on social media. I kept popping up on her feed and said, hey, you're supposed to do this with me. And I'll get into that story in a little bit. But when she came to me, I was at the peak of my coaching business, making more than I've ever made, having a lot of great success, helping other people have the same success, just getting their message out there. Until the Lord said, this isn't where I want you forever because there's no leverage here. And I was like, what are you talking about? And then he gave me this vision, which I feel like is very important. So for me, I can't wait to have kids. I'm 33 now, been married to my husband for 3 years. We don't have kids yet. And that's a whole nother story as to why God's waiting on that. But he gave me a vision of this little girl tugging on my sweater, sitting at my computer of, mommy, come play with me. And I said, no, honey, mommy has to work. And the Lord goes, that's what it's going to be like if you don't allow me to pivot you where I want to pivot you so I can really use you and build the life of, freedom that you actually want. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Of course, he doesn't highlight the whole staircase, gives you a little half step there. So I ended up transitioning out of my coaching business full time. Wasn't like let me just transition out. It was more like the Lord just pulled out the rug and said, we're doing this right now. And then I was like, okay. But what we've been able to create in Girl Power Alliance, which is a personal professional leadership development platform for women to come into this digital membership to be equipped to get poured into. And then it's also an opportunity where you can create residual income by harnessing the power of a team. Because when women love something, they love to share it. And they do get to share it. And when we added the opportunity onto that, it's when, kicked my camera. It's when everything kicked off. So it's really been such a blessing to see the trajectory of where the Lord's brought me. But I just get to keep pouring into people when it comes to leadership and speaking and still utilizing my gifts. It's just been in different formats over the last 7-8 years.
I think that highlights a really good point in that from everything I've seen, like a lot of people look at someone who now has self-confidence and has a direction and they think they were born with it. And from your story, and we'll get into that a little bit more in a second, I think it really emphasizes the fact that you weren't really ready to jump yet, right? And I've had similar experiences in my own life that sometimes hey, there's a next step, but it's a little scary to take the next step until you're kind of forced into it. And I think as you get forced into it and you're like, all right, cool, let me lean into this thing that, is going to be a challenge, and continue to put in the reps and do the work, that's when you start to believe, right? That's when you start to really like get the self-confidence that comes with the repetitions of doing the hard thing. Like the work comes first, then you start to build up the rest. I think a lot of people look at that backwards. Would you say that's fairly accurate?
Very accurate. I mean, the Lord's not going to wait till you're ready. It's like I've had the school of hard knocks. I'm sure a lot of us have had that, but I've been very stubborn of he's leading me in a direction and I'm like, no, this is not the plan. This is not what I want, or it's actually really what I want deep down, but this is not the way I envisioned it, or what everybody always knows. So yes, that hard leap, whether you take that leap yourself or it's kind of forced upon you to, like, even though we have free will, it was one of those where I didn't want to let go of my coaching business, for example. I was like, no, Lord, like this is so great. And I was set up to have, just a huge intake of new clients. And every single one of them, I had like almost nearly a dozen that just dropped out one after the next after the next. So it was like, okay, I'm taking the hint. I got that. But I still didn't want to let go because of fear of like, okay, well, this is big provision for our family. What are you doing? But then trusting that he has a plan, which of course, he did and he still does. But it's that you're coming out of your strength and you're pressing into his and surrendering it into his. And it's a lot easier said than done. And when you do it and then you experience it, it's a lot more easier. It's easier to do and to press into that because you know and you feel. But that's where faith comes into play. You got to believe that it's going to happen and then just let it go and not have these expectations of what you want and just being like, Lord, what do you want? And then align with that.
It's so true. And, I think, you touch on another great point there in the control aspect, because so many people want to just control everything about their life because like it's your life, right? And it's a precious thing. You want to just take control as much as possible so you don't leave it to other people. But leaving it to faith, I think is a really important part of that, and understanding, hey, you can't control everything. And I think sometimes it's almost like the harder we try and control something, the more it gets ripped out from under us to prove a point like, hey, like, who's really in control here? And it's a hard thing to accept for a lot of people.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things for me, just being and it's a release every day. I call it I'm a recovering control freak. And there's still times where I want to like hold on to things, right? But at the same time, I'm now at the mindset, because I've had to hit my head against the wall so many times of like, okay, Lord, if this isn't happening, like show me your way, show me what you want to see. Because a big part of my journey of what the Lord brought me through to be able to be a founder of this company that we've created was a lot of refining, breaking off generational curses, breaking off a lot of things that were attached to me because of just where I've come from and limiting beliefs or whatever. And I kept being like, okay, Lord, I want to align my mind, my heart, my everything with what you want for me, because you're only going to want what's best for me. And guess what? A lot of what's best for you is a lot of dying to self. And that's not something the world glorifies. You following what the Lord's asking you to do is not what the world's going to glorify. They're going to glorify having a hefty bank account, time freedom, being on a yacht somewhere, living this picture perfect life. And then on the back end, there's a lot of people don't have that fulfillment. They don't have the community. They don't have the other things. And so we look at just the facade on the front, but really what lies beneath is what matters. And Lord's really brought me through a journey on that of drilling down deep, like to the studs of we got to rip it all out and build up brand new. I don't want you to just come occupy a house that somebody formerly lived in. I want to build it from the ground up with you so we can really inhabit this together is something that he really highlighted to me.
I think that, you're right. A lot of people glorify the bank account, the bicep, the babe, the Bentley, like all that stuff. There's nothing wrong with it, but I think it should be the byproduct of your standards, not the focus of your efforts, right? Like you can have those things in your life, but it shouldn't be that's what you're after. Like there's nothing wrong with enjoying the fruit of your work, right? If if you want to work really hard and do a thing and provide value to people and you want to get those things at some point in life, cool. It should be just because you have a standard in your life that you want to do all these things excellently. And when it comes time to buy a house, you're going to want an excellent house. Cool. I get it. No problem with that. But it shouldn't be the primary focus and something that you show off. Let me ask you this, because you're pretty far ahead, let's say, in your faith walk. What do you say to someone who maybe is just starting out, or maybe doesn't have that faith built up yet, who is struggling with control or struggling to try and figure out, how do I do these things and trust that it's going to work out?
Yeah, there's a couple things I would definitely say to that. The first thing that I always hear is, oh, I just don't really like to read, or reading the Bible doesn't make sense. I'm not really like, it's just not my thing. So I said the same thing. And I had a friend ask or share with me to start with the Message version. So there's a lot of versions out there. The Message version really puts it more in like groupings and verbiage that's more like what we talked today. Then from there, I kind of call that the milk. And then I graduated up into different versions where now I can read the King James if I want. And then I'm like, it actually makes sense to me and I understand it. But if you go straight into the King James and you have a bunch of ye's and shan'ts and shall's and all this stuff, and we don't talk like that, you're like, yeah, not resonating. Plus the fact that Jesus spoke in parables, and a lot of it is parables. You're like, okay. So I used to get in there reading it for, okay, I have to. Rather than, I switched my mindset, and it took me a while to get to this point, so here's a shortcut. Okay, Holy Spirit, highlight what you want me to see. Is it a passage? Is it a word? What is it? What is it? One of my favorite Bibles now is the John Maxwell Leadership Bible, which is an NIV Bible, and I love it because he pulls out leadership lessons throughout all of Scripture. I think, hands down, it's one of my favorites, because just being a leader myself, pouring into a lot of other leaders in our organization, like being able to frame it, and here's the Scripture, but then here's also like a different framing from a guy who's been writing books and been with the Lord for, I don't even know how old he is now, like upper 80s, like he's been doing it for a very long time. So that's kind of a trajectory there. Also, I always prioritize in the morning. So I have a very habitual morning routine. I used to always prioritize working out. And then I'm like, Lord, if after I'm done working out, I'll have some time for you. Never happened for a long time. And then eventually I started feeling like, okay, this is never going to happen unless you change something. So I started changing my morning schedule, because I believe starting off the morning with pouring into your mind, body, spirit first and foremost, period. Not starting it with coffee, not starting it with a phone call for work, or, jumping on social media to see all the things. Like, starting it with stuff that's going to fill your cup is absolutely key. So I get a lot of people are, oh, I'm not a morning person. Well, you're telling yourself that. So when you tell yourself you're not a morning person, you're not going to be a morning person. Just wake up 30 minutes earlier and just kind of dive in and start being like, okay, Lord, what do you have for me? And just create that quiet time. Maybe it's not a morning for you yet. Maybe it's in the middle of the afternoon or in the evening or late at night, but make that a non-negotiable. Like, you like to go on social media and scroll, or you like to, you got to eat, you got to drink water. Like, there's non-negotiables. That should be a non-negotiable. Like, you're reading the bread of life. You're creating that space in that environment to seek after the Lord. Like, that should be a non-negotiable. And when I first started doing that, it wasn't just this euphoric experience, like, oh, this is so great. It was a lot of me complaining of like, Lord, this isn't happening and this isn't happening and da 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 da. And then I eventually got sick of my own stuff, and I was like, if I was God, I would be so annoyed with me right now. But he has a lot more grace than I do. So I eventually was like, okay, this time is really to yearn after his heart. So then that was my prayer. I was like, Lord, show me another side of you. Like, I want to see more of you. And if he's not speaking to you or ushering words into your spirit, like, he speaks to people differently, I understand that. But anybody can open up the word and something can be spoken to them, even from a scripture you've read 1,000 times. Like, as long as you're hungry for that and you're open and you want that, just keep showing up and having that heart posture and that desire to want to yearn after him. But so often we treat God like a vending machine of you didn't answer this, you're not doing that, I'm struggling here. And we're putting all our expectations on the Creator when he already knows what's best for us. And sometimes, there are times where he's like, I want your attention, so I'm going to be quiet. Or I'm not going to do this because I want you to see something else. That's what he's done for me, at least. I can't speak for God. Obviously, everybody has a different journey. but just to give people some realistic expectations, but also intentionality of, if you're not intentionally like, okay, what's a version of the Bible that I can read? Or am I going to set aside quiet time? Am I going to God like a wishing well and praying and hoping to get a return? Or am I actually going to him to yearn after his heart, to learn about the one who created me, and developing that relationship with the Holy Spirit? Like, that was something that I really pressed into, and I do it very early in the morning because it's quiet, nobody's up, and it's like pitch black outside. That's me. Your time may be completely different, but you have to be intentional about it, because so often we are intentional about all these other things that bring us the desires of our heart, when truly there's so much more vision and desires to be unlocked when we get to sit in his presence and sometimes just listen. And last thing that I'll say on this, if sitting in a quiet environment, you're easily distracted like me, I turn on soaking music. So it's like instrumental, piano, usually some kind of like, prophetic sound, something. And you can find a lot of that on YouTube. Anyways, having that play in the background helps my mind be trained of like, it's quiet time now. We're focusing in now. Like, what's gonna happen later in today on the schedule is gonna happen. What's gonna happen, whatever conversations with my husband or anybody else that comes, whatever, it'll happen when it happens. But right now, this is my time with him, and nothing's gonna come between me and that. And sometimes it'll be more of a battle because the enemy wants to get in there. But set that environment. For me, I need that music to really kind of usher in that presence and to really be focused. So I know that's kind of a long-winded answer, but obviously there's a lot to say when it comes to helping somebody who's just starting out.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed a lot of things there. And man, I have so many directions I want to take that, because there's so many good points in that. I think the first one to me is how often people look at how quickly will I get rewarded? Like, we got this Amazon Prime mentality that you want to be able to just, all right, fine, I did my morning routine once. I sat and I prayed. My life wasn't any better today.
Right.
This sucks. Not for me. Like, first of all, encouragement there. It's not going to be as quick as you think. So get that idea out of your head. But if you're willing to just risk, and I say that jokingly, risk 30 days and just believe it for 30 days and just try it. And like, take 30 days and just incorporate that as the first thing you do in the morning and actually believe it. Don't just do it expecting it to fail, because, I think that intentionality really is a key factor there. But just suspend belief for 30 days and say, I fully believe that this effort is going to produce some fruit in my life, and see what happens. Like, and then at the end of those 30 days, sit there and honestly evaluate, first of all, did you legitimately do it every day with intention? Did you just, kind of act it out to say, yeah, you checked the box and did it? And then look for the goodness in your life. Like, I think that can't be overlooked, because, another point that, you touched on earlier is like, there's so much that draws our attention in the course of a day, whether it's, what's my spouse going to say? Am I having an argument with them? Is something going on for work? What else do I have on my mind? Like, there's so many places that we're pulled to, and we want to go address those first, because I feel like bigger burning fires, right? It feels like I have to address this thing because this person is mad, or this person's upset, or this person's waiting on me. And you push off the other stuff because it doesn't immediately show fruit, right? You're like, all right, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to first be in a panic because I know this has to be done. This has to be done. That's got to be done. I'll get to that later, because if I don't do it, no one's going to be affected but me, right? And I think we fail to realize what's actually happening is you're causing way more pain down the line and adding more days of waking up to stress and drama and pressure and all this crap. Because the more that you take care of first things first, right? You take care of yourself, you take care of your mind and your body first. That gives you way more capacity to pour into the rest of your day, right? Like, I think a lot of people, and I've said this before, they look at rest as something that you're only allowed to do after you've worked hard, not something that sets you up for being able to actually work hard, right? Like, you can't just hustle and grind your way through this the same way that you can't just try and willingly control everything in your life. It's not going to work, and it's going to take you to a dark place, right? Because it's going to kick your butt and eventually say like, hey, it doesn't work like that. I think the more that you resist, the harder that lesson eventually hits you in the face.
Yeah, that's good. I'm like over here just like, yes. I mean, there's so many rabbit trails that we can trail off of that. But it's the, I'm reminded of, because in business, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, you probably have because you've been in business for a while. It's like the painkiller versus the vitamin, right? Everybody wants to go for the painkiller because it's the immediate right now, and that's how you get somebody into your program. And I used to teach the same thing. It's like, I get it because everybody wants the immediate pain. But in this case, it's the vitamin. It's all the other nutrients that you need right now to really be able to absorb, and it's a buildup over time. It's not an instant right this second. And everybody's so used to the Amazon Prime mentality, the microwave mentality. I needed it 30 seconds ago. And they're not used to cultivating and sitting and waiting and having perseverance. And another thing, a big thing the Lord's highlighted to me is people are built to do hard things, but we have far less people these days that are willing to do hard things. So for example, this isn't hard for me anymore because I built up to it. So when I say this is probably going to sound impossible to most because I get that all the time, but it's not impossible. I get up at 2 o'clock in the morning, Monday through Thursday. I have my quiet time from 2 to 4. Then I go to the gym from 4 to 5, and then I come home, get ready, get started for the day. And because in our organization, I'm connecting with people all over the world, with our ambassadors and people that are building our opportunities. So my phone's going off, my other phone that I keep at home until I'm ready to answer it is going off like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning my time here in California. So for me, getting up at 2, most people are like, that is crazy. But knowing where my day is going to lead, if I don't pour into myself spiritually, create that time to really yearn after God's heart, fill up my cup, he's going to fill mine. Because what does scripture say? Draw near to him, he'll draw near to you. It's not the opposite. Even though people want it to be, it's not. I know that if I don't have that and then pour into my body, which are two hard things. I'm getting up early, being still and quiet, even though my brain wants to tell me, oh, I got all these things. I'm like, shh. Then I go into the gym and I push my body. So by the time my day actually starts, it doesn't matter what blows up in my face, if anything, I'm ready. I'm like, okay, we'll deal with it as it comes. When the old me used to be like, oh my gosh, like what if this happens? Oh my gosh, like, and I would get anxiety and I would start to kind of freak out and it would just create all this unnecessary stress. So the vitamin is you got to keep doing these things over and over and nourishing. First of all, I nourish my mind and my spirit. Then I go and I take care of my body because that has to operate as well in order for me to get through. Both of those aren't instant gratification. That takes time to see the results that you want. In the spiritual walk, you're never done. Like helping your body get to whatever state you want to, you're never done. But we're always looking for that finish line. There's never a finish line. There's just a, hey, we're doing great. I'm proud of myself. Let's give ourselves a pat on the back because we did the thing and we keep moving. Lord, what's next? What's next? The only time you're finished is when there's no more breath in your lungs. So to that, like, I want it now. I want it now. That's a lie that the world has fed us. And we need to get back to what can I do now and build up over time to have that longevity in all areas of my life.
Yeah, strongly agree. I think for a large part, like we sort of fail to look at the cumulative effect of the decisions we make. Like where my life is today is the net result of all the decisions I made 5 years ago, right? But it's easy to forget that. And it's easy to forget, hey, the decisions I'm making right now today are going to shape where my life is in 5 years from now. Because we just want to focus on today, right? And I think if we made more of an active effort to sit quietly and reflect on where am I at today, honestly, and with gratitude. I think the gratitude part is super important in that. And then just sit and say, I am grateful for these things in my life today. Because there is a time in your life, for most people, that you would have prayed for and been super wishing that you had the things you have now that you're taking for granted, for most people. But if you sit with gratitude and you say, I am really grateful for this, 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 and this, it's going to accomplish a couple things. One, you physically cannot be grateful and anxious at the same time. Okay, there's one part of your brain that controls both. You can't be anxious and grateful at the same time. So if you're intentionally being grateful, you're going to push away that anxiety. There's just physically no room for it. Second thing is going to reinforce the positive decisions you made in the past. So if you sit and you say, I'm grateful for this in my life, and spend the extra 30 seconds and look at the decisions you made over the course of the past 3 months, 6 months, a year, 5 years, and how they led you to that, it starts to really reinforce in your head, yeah, if I want my life to be in this spot 5 years from now, I have to take the decisions I make today seriously. And I think we skip over that part because we don't see the immediate benefit from it, right? There's the painkiller that we just want to take because we want to get some AI based tool which is going to make us a millionaire by the weekend. Like
Seriously.
so many people push that because it's such an attractive offer because everyone suffers from this or that. Like everyone wants to be out of pain as quickly as possible, but they're kicking the can down the road and not realizing that the further they kick it, the harder it's going to come back and really cause even more pain down the line. So I just wanted to reinforce that. It's such a critical point.
Gosh, that is like so timely, the AI comment. Like everybody, that's so good. And the kicking the can down the road too, it's like a boomerang. Like it's going to come back and hit you. And then you're going to be like, ow, that was probably worse than if I were to just dive in right now, because it's never going to get easy. For example, I always think about when, before I met my husband, all I wanted was to find the love of my life. I wanted to get married. I wanted to start a family. I wanted to be a young mom. I also wanted to be successful, right? You want all the things. Well, I thought I was going to be married in my mid-20s with kids, but at least by the time I'm 30, and just you have your own society timeline, right? Or the timeline society gives you, and you want to follow that. Well, eventually, I kept just dating the wrong people. And I'm just like, okay, like, what's the deal? And then it was kind of like, you're pointing one finger at somebody else and you got the rest pointing back at you. I'm the common denominator. So I'm like, what is my problem? So I finally was like, okay, Lord, I'm done. I'm over it. And then eventually he was like, hey, like, there's your husband, and highlighted Johnny to me. And then we ended up, that's a whole nother story of how we got together. But there was a lot of refining of who I needed to be before I found that person. Because a lot of people are like, oh, this person's going to fix me. This AI is going to help me. This product that I saw on TikTok or Instagram is going to be my saving grace. Now we get those things, and then what? We want something else after that. We're like, maybe it wasn't what I wanted. Because it's like, it goes so much deeper than that. And so a lot of people just barely scratch the surface. And one of the things that we teach in our community that we really pour into these ladies, it's like, we got to go deep. It's the inside out transformation. It's not like, oh, hey, look at this product that makes me look beautiful, makes me feel great. Like, those are great. It's the who are you and the limiting beliefs and the lies that you're believing and the environment that you're in. And we need to break out of that, rebuke it, and move into the person that God's called you to be. That's going to attract the people you want to be around. That's going to make you feel like you're in alignment. It's going to bring you fulfillment, and it's going to start checking all the boxes and crossing off all the things you don't want, of like, hey, we're done with that. Because a lot of people know the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Then why do we do it? Like, let's find something else. Let's dig in deeper, being like, Lord, this isn't working. What else? Stop asking the world. Stop asking the gurus. Stop asking TikTok and Instagram, and start digging in deep and allow the Holy Spirit to lead you to something that's actually going to bring you fruit and produce fruit in your life. And then from your fruit and your seeds, guess what? What do seeds do? They start to spread, and then more fruit gets to be able to build off of that. But not enough people are producing fruit, at least good fruit, I should say. And then the seeds aren't being spread. And so I believe, like, in this hour, the Lord is really doing a deep work in people, having a lot of people be patiently waiting, building the perseverance, really like digging down deep and doing things of like, I can't go a million miles an hour. I got to really slow it down and be intentional. Be intentional. The pandemic helped us all with that, I would say. It's like, you got to stop right here. What really matters? What's actually happening? Let's assess it. So I love that you're talking about that, because if we keep kicking that can, the can's only going to lead to just this dusty road of always kicking the can, and at the end of your life, you're going to be like, I wish I would have done these things. It's never going to be easy, but it'll always be worth it.
Right. And, when we first brought that up, I actually thought of something I didn't realize when I did it. A couple of days ago, I was on taking a walk with my son. And when we walk, we take a garbage bag and a picker, and we pick up whatever litter we find on our way. And we filled up an entire garbage bag on our way to the park. When we got there, I put it in the garbage can. And then walking back, like, I already had gone that way, so I knew there wasn't going to be additional garbage. We just cleared it all. So we walked back, and we actually did find like a big 40-ounce Bud Light can sitting in the street. And we were like, we're not going to leave it here, right? We don't have a garbage bag, so we're just going to pick it up. We're going to carry it. And it was like a 1.5-mile walk back. And during that trip, we were talking, goofing around, and he was essentially playing soccer with it just to kind of entertain himself. He's going to be 10, still a kid. So I'm realizing now, as you said that, when he found the can, The can was in perfect condition, right? Nice tube, it rolled down the road. And as he continued to kick it down the road, it got dented, and then it got bent, then it got crushed. And then as he continued to kick it down the road, it didn't roll as far. And it took a lot more effort every single freaking time he kicked it. First of all, it wouldn't go as far. Second of all, it was crinkled, so it would go sideways. And I'm really realizing in this moment how literal that expression is. Kicking that can down the road, every time you kick it, it gets harder and harder. I just want to share that one. But I think before you mentioned something pretty important, and I want to share a quote or saying that came to mind, in that you can't find outside what you don't find inside first. I think a lot of us look at relationships, we look at work, we look at TikTok, we look at whatever to go kind of solve a thing for us, whether that's a feeling or whether that's an emotion that we're missing, whatever it is. And then we get pissed off because it doesn't work. Like we keep trying to fill this void with, oh, this relationship will fix it, this painkiller will fix it, this obsession, this vice will fix it. But we ignore the fact that we got to fix whatever the thing is inside of us first, because it's really uncomfortable to have that, right? First of all, we have to admit that there's something wrong with us that needs to be fixed. Second of all, we have to figure out how to do it. And it's not easy. There's not a lot of people talking about it. There's not a lot of people supporting that, right? There's way more culture supporting things that are not great for us than supporting people having these like deep, honest, real, raw conversations.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, it goes back to like that sensitivity piece as well. I mean, anything could be, for me, I could track back anything to being like super sensitive and aware. But I first just want to comment on the story of you, the trash thing. Because first of all, I remember seeing that story on TikTok, and I have to comment on this. I'm like, oh my gosh, I love that. And then I think you posted another story of somebody else started doing it. And then that ripple effect of you just being that example, tying everything, all this together, you might not have, so whoever's watching or listening to this may not have that example. I know I didn't. I grew up in a great home, loving parents, grew up in a Christian home, but it was very surface level. I mean, like I was baptized when I was 7, but never had a relationship with the Holy Spirit and really digging in deep personally, truly, until the last couple years, which is crazy for me to even like think and say, but it's true. And so the environment in which you're in is so important, and you may not have ever seen this, but when you actually take time to get out of the scroll hole or focusing on those things, whether it's shopping or just following somebody else's profile and wishing that life is yours or whatever it may be, like you take a moment to pull out of that. Okay, what's actually happening here? What am I actually doing? Is where I'm at right now with what's pouring into me, if anything, the environment that I'm in with what I'm doing, do I want to be in this place this time next year? So you have to ask yourself that question, number one. Number two, speaking of kind of like the scrolling on social media and such, this can even tie back into somebody who is maybe newer in their faith or really hasn't gone in too deep. Like I've been a believer for over, what is it? Let me do the math here. Like 20 or 25 years. We'll just round it off, 25 years. And I really, up until the last 3, haven't really dug down deep. That's crazy to me. But what really kicked it off for me of digging down deep was this challenge that my now brother-in-law gave me that actually involves the things that we normally get stuck in, but maybe don't realize it. So number one, for 30 days, you're talking about, for 30 days, risk it. Here's another risk that you can add on there. For 30 days, replace all your social media scrolling. When you catch yourself like, I'm just lost in the scroll hole, replace it with a sermon, something that can pour into you. Instead of listening to secular music, switch it out for Christian music. I promise you there's a lot better Christian music that's out there. It's not just gospel and worship. There's a lot of great hip hop, R&B, even more country, like a lot of really good variety that's out there. And some you're like, wait, this is Christian? My husband and I say that to each other all the time. We're like, this is rad. Intentionally praying. Inside of this 30-day, prayer reset, or inside of this 30-day spiritual reset is what we called it, 40 minutes of intentional praying. And it was 5 minutes praying for other people, 5 minutes thanking the Lord for what he's done, 5 minutes on praying for your business, 10 minutes on, really yearning after God's heart and thanking him for who he is. And you break that up in increments of specific things for 40 minutes consecutive. Sounds crazy. But by the time you're done, you're like, wow, there's so much that you can actually pray for. Because I get that a lot from people. I don't even know what to pray for because we have so much going on around here. So all that to say is these different intentionalities are really going to be able to help take these habits of, I'm going to go to this vice and I'm going to switch it and turn it to something else that's actually going to pour in and feed me. That was huge. And my husband and I actually went through that together when we were dating, and it really set me off in this trajectory of bringing sensitivity into my spirit of the words I'm listening to when it comes to music. Why am I scrolling? Because there's sometimes I even get stuck of, I'm always going to her page. Why am I going to her page? What do I like about it? Am I comparing, or am I, congratulating? Am I, wishing I was there, or am I really happy for her? You know what I mean? Like, we get caught up in that. So we got to stop that, assess where we are, because I liked how you said reflection. Nobody, I can't say nobody, not as many people spend a lot of time on reflecting nearly as much. So they don't know how far they've come or even where they're actually at, because they're sedating themselves with everybody else's stuff or words that are, honestly, a lot of music is a lot of death, speaking death and ill into you. The beat, the foundation of the artist, all of it. And when I realized that, I got turned off to a lot of music when I used to be like, oh, I love it for the beat. Now I'm like, I actually hear things in that beat that are not healthy, because the Lord has highlighted that to me. That took a while for me to get to, but most people don't want to even get to that sensitivity, because once you know better, you have to do better. And if you don't, now you know you're not. So I know it's kind of a long tangent, but it was just like all these different examples. I love that you brought all those in. Just kind of wanted to, I echo that. I love that. And you keep kicking that can, it's going to get harder and harder. You're right. And that was such a good visual of what that looks like. And so I love that you shared that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, when you said just now, when you know better, you have to do better, I think that highlights probably the most important part of all of this. Maybe not the most important part. There's been a lot of awesome things here. But I think for a lot of people, they don't have that conversation with themselves, because it's kind of like the mentality, I think more common for guys, but like, you don't go to the doctor because, hey, if the doctor doesn't tell you that something is wrong, then it's not wrong. They never told you it was broken, so it's technically not broken. I think when we don't have the conversations with ourselves to figure out, where am I at, I could just ignore it. And once you know, then you really feel guilty for ignoring it. But if you don't know, then no big deal. You kind of let yourself off. Yeah, that hits hard. I talk sometimes with people about trying to figure out their destination, right, for growth, or where you want to go. And the analogy that this reminds me of is, I say, like, hey, if you want to get directions to reach wherever, right, you want to drive to Texas, pick a spot. If you don't know where you're starting from, your directions are not going to work. Like, you can't plug in directions without a starting address and have the starting address be accurate, because otherwise you're starting from a street that you're not even close to. So, like, people just want to get the quick hack, the AI trick and tool to kind of instantly get to Texas by tomorrow, but they're forgetting the most important freaking part of that is to understand where you're actually starting from. Like, if you don't put in a valid starting address, your directions will not work. And I just want to emphasize how important it is to get that actual starting address, to understand who you really are currently, and not live in this, like, guilt about what's wrong with you. Because I'll guarantee you there is plenty wrong with plenty of people, and none of us are perfect. Okay, all of us struggle. All of us have things that we want to improve, grow, make better, whatever. Like, just because you have something in your life that you're not super proud of, like, cool, me too. Like, it's totally okay to not be 100% happy with where you're at. You should love yourself. You should know that you are enough where you are. But you should also know that, like, there's more, right? So just be honest, understand where you are, and then get around some people who are going to lift you up and continue to push you toward where you should be. And I can't emphasize that part enough. So thank you for being one of those people.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to do it. It's the stuff that really matters is, like you said, like, who are you? Get that starting point. Most people, like you said, don't even know where that is, because they're afraid probably of, like, I don't want to see what's there. I want to just keep brushing it under the rug. I want to keep kicking the can. I want to deal with that later, and later never comes. And then you never really even know who you are. And it's this, like, nasty ripple effect. I don't know who I am. Then, people don't really know me. And therefore, like, I don't have really real friends. And I don't even know my purpose. And it's like just this downward spiral that the enemy takes us down, because we don't take the time to know who we are, how we were created, and whose we are. And, like, really getting to know our creator. Like, that is so important, because then you really get to see things not for what you think they are, but for what the truth is. And the truth, you may not like it. And that's also another thing is everybody wants these like candy coated, like sweet tasting messages. It's like, no, there's a lot of stuff out there, and we're built to be warriors. We're built to do hard things. Like warriors aren't going to the front lines and just being like, let's, have a thumb war and let's play patty cake and let's have a tea party. It's we're in battle. And when we understand that we're in the physical, but there's also a spiritual battle and there's constantly things that are butting up against each other, there's things that we got to get rid of. People, honestly, that we have to maybe distance ourselves and get rid of. Environments we need to get out of and new ones we need to step into. Like, there's a lot of responsibility on us. And a lot of people want to negate responsibility because it's easier. It's if I don't know, then I don't have to do better, like you said. And it's like, I'm all about taking that personal responsibility of like, okay, what do I do now? Like, what can I change? And even as a leader, that's a whole nother message. It's like leader will be the first to take responsibility, even though maybe it wasn't their fault. It's like, you know what? I'll take responsibility here and be able to step in and then show that grace and compassion and empathy for other people. But we first got to show it to ourselves. So take that time to give that to yourself. Most people, again, won't do that. But I challenge you to do that. Like really, like the gratitude thing. One of the things I gave to my husband for his birthday was I actually hand wrote basically it was like a little gratitude journal of like all these different notes of daily reminders that he could flip through of just what he means to me and like all that stuff. And, I'm like, maybe he won't like this. Maybe this is silly. Cause I literally could not think of anything to get him. He's very hard to shop for. It's crazy. And I'm like, you know what? He likes things that are like homemade and I'm not the homemade person. So I'm like, this is going to add another cherry on top because I don't create that way. And then when he got it, it was just like, oh, wow. Like it really meant a lot because it was just the time that it took to really, this is how I appreciate you. Do that for yourself. Maybe start for yourself. And then that could be a great gift, honestly, you can give to other people. And then sometimes I got to go back and look at that book if we're in a little tiff or a fight being like, okay, wait a second. Yep, here's a good reminder as to, why I still love you. Marriage isn't perfect. I'm just kidding. But it's one of those, like, it's a great reminder because you're thinking of all the negative all the time. Right. Remind yourself of how far you come and the positive that's in your life and be grateful for those things and be grateful for the trials because without that, you'll have nothing to compare the goodness to. And you want growth because I think it was Jim Rohn that said this. Forgive me if I'm wrong with the person who said it, but if you're not growing, you're dying. Like, let that sink in. Like, you want to keep growing. You don't want to just stay stuck.
I agree. I think you touched on something else before and saying that we're all warriors. Reminded me of something else too that, I think a lot of people lose perspective on. When you think of a warrior, I think a lot of people look at going out and, the act of violence, right? Whether it's going to war and being prepared to fight to the death and do whatever it takes to achieve the goal. And, I think when people think of them as a warrior, they kind of get this perspective of, hey, do I need to go out there and violently force my way into getting the thing I want? And I think that causes a lot of pain, right? And it causes people to push other people away and they try and just like force all this stuff to happen. And the perspective shift for me that was really powerful was understanding that like the goal of a warrior is not to create war. It is to endure war to create peace. Like the ultimate goal of a warrior is to create peace. They are just willing to go through war and do whatever it takes to get to peace. So I think understanding the end goal of being a warrior, right, isn't to go out there and beat your chest and piss people off and rob and steal and do whatever it takes to create this life for yourself. It's being willing to endure the hard stuff to get to peace, right? That was just a really powerful perspective that I got that you reminded me of, so I just wanted to share.
That's good. I'm like, sometimes you forget about that, right? Like that didn't even register when I brought up the warrior thing because we're so used to going to war and being in battle. And maybe not everybody going to war is looking for peace. People are literally just going to war to go hurt each other, right? But the ultimate goal, the whole point of it is to come to an agreement and find peace somewhere. And I love that you brought that up because like you take something that can be so crazy and catastrophic, but the goal is like, we need to work through something. And typically, like, war doesn't even actually really need to happen. Communication, sitting with people, sitting with yourself. Like, what are these feelings or what are these things that are coming up? And really addressing that can avoid the catastrophe of war altogether. So I love that you brought up that perspective. That is so good.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think it's unfortunate, especially like when we look at times we're in currently. Like to me, war is really just forcing people to push to their limit. Who's going to give up and talk first? That's really all it is. Is you're just two people who are so stubborn they are unwilling to be the first one to talk and be like, all right, look, we got to solve this. How can we make this work? You're forcing the other person to get to that point by just depleting them of resources and just death. And that is a nasty place to be. And there are so many just ill effects from that. But, I think when you zoom out, you realize that a lot of us do the same thing in our relationships. We do it to our business, to ourselves. Like, because we don't want to have the conversation to say, hey, partner, here's where I'm at. Like, maybe it's uncomfortable to admit that you need help or you're unhappy with something because you're afraid that the other person's going to get upset and they're going to retaliate. But, like, being willing to be vulnerable and transparent and show up and be like, hey, listen, here's where I'm at in my life. This is what I'm struggling with. Let's address it, right? Not me versus you, but me and you against the thing. We got to figure that stuff out because, there's no more room for the nastiness. We gotta find a better way.
Yeah, I love that you said that, just figuring out like coming together and figuring out the thing. It's everybody's going through so much that sometimes it's so like incomprehensible of like, okay, how can I deal with what I'm dealing with right now? And then also help somebody else go through their thing. And so this is where sometimes one of the things that I had to do in the news, for example, is I had to learn to compartmentalize because I had to deal with so many traumatic stories that I was like, I can't take that home. Like, how was your day? Yeah, no, you don't want to hear how my day was because it was a wild one and it'll probably depress you. So compartmentalizing of like, you know what, my stuff needs to be right here, but right now I get to be present with that person. I get to be a listening ear. If they want me to give them feedback, if they want me to pour in, I'm happy to do that. Because so often, and I definitely have struggled with this, I'm like, my husband in our first couple of years of marriage, he's like, you're always trying to coach me. You're always trying to like give me all this stuff that I don't ask for. And so I had to learn to be quiet and just listen. And then if he wants feedback or he asks, like, okay, because I'm a fixer. I'm like, let me give you the solution. I hear the problem. Not everybody wants that. But sitting with people, listening to people, if they want something, they will ask. Or if there's something really burning on you, hey, do you mind if, like, is this a good place I can give you feedback? If not, totally fine. Creating that space is something that many people need, and they don't necessarily need to go to therapy to do it. Now, therapists and like all of that profession that has, that has weight. It's not like I'm saying don't do that, but we can do that as a community, in our own communities, for each other. That brings a lot of healing. It can bring revelations from people's experiences. It can do a lot of good if we take that time. And any of my friends will tell you, I will, for me, like I will spend hours and I go to bed early because I get up early, but I will be out if we're around a fire pit, something about the fire pit, good conversation, like in it, like I will be out there all night long. If the conversation is good and it's really, we're getting somewhere, we're drilling down deep. I live for that. The minute we just stay up here more than 5 minutes at that surface level, like I just start, nope, I'm out. We'll see you later. Because I'm like, I don't want to take my time just to talk about how work is and how the weather is. Like, I actually would love to know how you are. And I've gotten to that point where I'm like, I don't need to talk about me. If you want to ask, that's fine. But I actually rather talk about you because I know most people don't get that time and they don't have somebody who actually can have a listening ear to just be there. Maybe just empathize with them because people are throwing their traumas around like, well, you went through this. Well, this is mine. And we're trying to trump each other's trauma of whose is worse. It's all not great. Who's to say like one's worse than the other? But creating that space where people can have an outlet and heal and maybe share it for the first time because it is tender and vulnerable, that's something that it's also a lost art, but people desperately need. And we can set aside time to do that if we choose to. It's a matter if we want to and if we choose to. And I believe we can.
I do too. I think I've said before, everyone wants 4 basic things. They want to feel loved, seen, heard, and appreciated. And I think for so many people, we don't get that. So we just bleed out all over other people, trying to force them to hear us or see us. And that's where we get into these situations where like, they're just itching for a way to just vomit out their life on anyone, anytime they get a chance. So they just want to feel seen. They want to feel heard. And, someone like yourself who gets to a spot where they already feel loved, seen, heard, and appreciated through either gratitude, through faith, through self-care, through good relationships, you're in a spot where you can hear other people, right? So it just takes that ripple effect of enough people doing the work to take care of themselves, right? So that we have capacity to see and hear other people. That's what it takes, right? It takes us creating that vision of possibility. Like, here's two people who've done the work, right? And don't get me wrong, there's still work that we need to do, right? We're not done. We've still got plenty of growth and improvement to go, but we've created room in our lives to be able to see and hear other people, right? And we're creating that little ripple effect day by day where, yeah, people are not going to bleed out in front of us. We're going to be able to have some level of capacity to help them and make them feel loved, seen, heard, and appreciated.
That's so
And
good.
yeah, I can't emphasize that part enough.
I hear you. I talk with a lot of women all day long, love them. And women sometimes are the worst at that. It's just like, oh, you want to listen? And I'm like, whoa. And so luckily I have a trained ear where I can pick up on the like, okay, that's actually what you wanted to say, but this is like 5-10 minutes of a rambling message. But I understand they haven't been heard. And that's actually a huge part of my mission is like, I've from coaching to programs that we have, it's just, I want women to have more impact with less words. People in general. So what you say really does connect and hit home for people because you have great stories inside of you, great things, great revelations, breakthroughs, but it gets lost in the bleeding out and all of the extra because you're so desperate to be heard rather than somebody needs to hear this message. Right. It's always less about us, always more about other people. So that's why as leaders, we get to refine. This whole podcast is about how we refine from the secret place and onward, right? Because it starts there. And then it's like what is done in the dark is always going to be shown in the light, good or bad. And so it's like you get to choose what that is, but it takes intentionality along the way. And if you even paint it this way, who is somebody that you look up to? Like, who is somebody you look up to? Think of, one or two people. What do you think they're doing behind closed doors? What do you think they're doing on the back end? They have failed more times. They have done the work, the hard stuff more times. Like, they have gone there. And they may not necessarily show it outwardly, but you can see it in their results. I'm always about like, how can I reverse engineer? Who are they talking to? Who are they listening to? How are they growing? How are they, like there's so many components rather than I see them on a yacht on a vacation every other month. Like what is that? That feeds our flesh, but our spirit needs like, okay, let's pull it back. Because you said this at the beginning of the podcast and I love it. It's like, even though money is a big focus for people, yes, enjoy the fruits. There's a lot of money mindset issues that are out there and a lot of people that actually wish money away. And this could be a whole nother podcast, so we probably shouldn't go down this rabbit hole because of their programming and what's happened to them. But it's like the Lord didn't create us to be in poverty and to be living paycheck to paycheck and worried about how am I going to pay my bills and my rent. He created us to be in abundance. And one of the things we talk about in our environment at Girl Power Alliance is being kingdom financiers. How can we be angel investors in other people's ideas? How can we bring the environment to have people be able to steward what they have and be able to compound and increase that? All biblical principles. But that gets lost in, but I'm just focused on me right now, right here. If you're always focused on that, that's always what you're going to get rather than, I want to build something and pour into something to have a long-term effect. So I love that we talked about that today because, again, it's not the candy-coated message that people want. They want the painkiller. But we're here with the vitamin that's going to bring you longevity and bring you the fulfillment and the things that you actually really want in life. And you have a lot of great fruit of that, Jim. And I love that. And I know that's why we have always resonated because, you go pick up garbage in your neighborhood because, like, anybody can do that. And how you're choosing to live your life and show your kids, like, how we can do better to create the environment around us better. Like, I love that. And you're being truly a great example for so many.
I appreciate that. I truly do. I think so many of us, like we grow up and our definition of what reality is based on what we've seen forever. And, to me, I see so many adults who are just bleeding out because they didn't get a thing as a kid. And, one of the reasons I do it is because it's a mission of mine to change that narrative, right? To grow the next generation that they can grow up with self-confidence, with identity, with belief in themselves. They don't have to worry about, man, how is this person going to like me or what are they going to judge? Like, just give them the example now and let them understand now from this age, like from the time that they're 5 years old. And it doesn't have to be this like heavy burden of lecturing a 5-year-old kid on identity and self-belief. If they could just live it, right? I don't want to sit there and lecture them. I want to live it and let them see possibility, let them see how it actually looks and works and feels. And then they can just have that set of values and understanding and go through their life and create more of those ripples and just, it's going to take time. I get that. And it's not something I'll ever probably see through just based on length of life. But like, I understand that there's something I can do. It's the same thing as picking up garbage. Like I live in a town of tens of thousands of people. I cannot physically clean every street possible. You know, I can't do it myself, but I can do the ones I can do. So I'll do them. And like by doing that, I'll inspire a couple of people to go do their blocks. And like, just because I can't do them all myself doesn't mean I can't do something and let that something set off a ripple that's going to change the grand scheme of things. Like, you know, I think we got to start just doing what we can do. Just because we can't do it all right away doesn't mean we can't do something.
That's good. A lot of people do get caught on that. That's so good.
Yes. Thank you. This was a good one. So I'm going to wrap it up because we've been going for about an hour at this point. But I do have one more super important question to ask you. Mm-hmm. Possibly the most important question of the whole podcast. What is your favorite flavor of cake?
Oh, yeah, with the cake. Oh, man. I would say, gosh, I don't know if this is ever going to change. Oh, wait. Hold on. It is going to change. So there's a family recipe that I don't even know where it came from. I think it came from like my mom's my great grandma or something like that. It's a coconut cake. So to give you some context for those that like coconut, hold on, just a little bit of context. This is so good. I actually probably need to make it now that I'm talking about it. It's a white cake that has this like coconut flavoring that soaks in the bread for a full day. And it's 2 layers. And the top, the icing is whipped cream with coconut shavings. It is insane. It literally, when my mom will make it for me for my birthday or on Easter, and I literally will eat it for breakfast. I never eat cake ever, hardly ever, and then let alone for breakfast. It's so good. Anyways, delicious. So coconut cake, homemade, family recipe.
Awesome. That's now I'm craving coconut cake. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's good.
Yeah, coconut is a favorite of mine. All that being said, I just want to again thank you for taking the time out of your day. I know that you've got a lot going on, so being here and spending this amount of time with me and sharing your life with everyone else is amazing. So thank you for that and for who you are. And if people want to get back in touch with you or learn more about Girl Power Alliance, like where would they go do that?
Yeah, so I would say the best way to connect is I'm a social media person, so you can find me Molly_Trotter on Instagram or Molly Trotter Gomez on Facebook. You can email me, molly@girlpoweralliance.com. Happy to, just kind of share our mission of what we do. But, even just share like if there's something on this show that resonated with you. That's why I love taking time and doing things like this. I never look at it as like, oh my gosh, like when are we going to be done? I'm like, Lord, however long you want it to go, because there's something in this that somebody needs. And I know I always get a lot out of it too. So thank you for reaching out and having me and just being obedient and starting this show and having me on the show and just having these raw conversations, because it definitely is going to water soil and seeds that are out there that need it. So thank you for having me.
My pleasure. All right. We'll see you.